Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. EMS working group. And we do have a quorum. So before you have an agenda, the minutes were emailed out yesterday. Has everybody had an opportunity to look over the minutes from last week? Any questions, additions, or deletions? Otherwise, I'll accept the motion.
So moved.
Commissioner Hams, second. Gary. Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes as presented? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous, Lord. Okay. We got, again, you know, my goal every week is to try to keep this big meeting to an hour. Today we may be a little bit longer than that. We got a presentation from the Future Metrics Subcommittee. The technology groups got their recommendations today. The current data group, I don't think they had anything further. I don't even think they met last week. They were done. So let's adjust the agenda. So we'll need to take item number 3. Sorry, I asked Gary not to do that.
Medical on back pain, 314 or pain,
Okay, so we're gonna need a motion to adjust the agenda to take item number 3 off, since the current data subcommittee won't have a report today. So what we'll do is we'll just take number 3 off and move the subsequent ones up.
Move we just amended agenda stated.
I second.
Okay. Does everybody understand what we're doing?
Yes.
All right, all those in favor of adjusting the agenda, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Okay, so we'll get right into it. Chief Bailey is, who's presenting for you? You present?
I'll initiate the presentation and then call on backup if necessary.
Good. We're ready when you are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I may have to.
Everybody have a copy of the handout. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the Future Metrics Working Subcommittee has been hard at work again over the course of the past week as a result of our efforts. First of all, let me acknowledge the contributions by the other subcommittees who provided us work product, technology, and data. Chief Knupp, I think, present, but provided valuable information to us, as well as members of the technology committee as well, and we appreciate their involvement. As a result of our efforts, there's the chief. I was just thanking you, Chief, for your contribution this week to our subcommittee. The Future Metrics Subcommittee, as a result of our work, has compiled what we would propose to this group as an overall performance standard supported by metrics that we believe are measurable, fair, and capable of or would result in quality level of services to the county, citizens of the county. Our proposed standards the document looks something like this, with a single countywide response zone with a total response time of no more than 14 minutes and 29 seconds countywide. Now, that response time would be inclusive of the shoot time plus the travel time. You know, we arrived at that information based on GIS information, as well as some other software applications. The shoot time is something that we'll talk a little bit about it later on, but again, that's subject to improvement. One of the things that we tried to incorporate in our performance standards and in our performance goals was an emphasis on annual improvement, and I think that we've done that. So our proposed performance standard is a single countywide response zone with a total response time of no more than 14 minutes and 29 seconds countywide. Yes, sir.
Is it okay if I ask a question?
Absolutely.
I was thinking about this amongst the other things the other day. Can you help me understand the thinking in going to a single county-wide response zone versus, at one time we talked about doing suburban, or urban, suburban, rural. And the reason why I ask is, in my mind, if, let's say 80% of the calls are in one geographic sector of the county, 90% of the calls are in one geographic sector of the county, and they meet the response time in that, the most significant portion of those calls, then there's other parts of the county that at the 90 percentile could be that whole at 10%, could be an entire geographic area. Does that make sense? So let's say 85% of the calls are on the 74 corridor. They hit all those within the response times. And then the other 5% are in the near that corridor. They hit all those calls with response times. In the rural area, I think there's still a possibility that the rural area consistently could be above the response time level, but just because it's not a large enough chunk of total responses, it doesn't get, there's no impetus to meet the response time in that area. So, 90% of the calls being met at 1429, if 90% of the calls are in a single geographic area or a more dense area, then why, then my concern is there's other parts geographically that don't have a statistically significant part of the calls, but could be left out completely or beyond that base benchmark regularly, just because of the nature of the way it's been established. Am I making any sense? Kind of how I'm explaining it, because
Can I
that's
address some of that?
Absolutely.
I think there's two answers. First,
okay.
every citizen in this county deserves the best possible service, and I think everybody agrees to that. But one of the things that we discussed in here is that it's not anticipated that because you've got faster response times in the center of the county along 74 corridor, that our remote citizens are going to receive any less than what we're targeting here. That's why the emphasis on having vehicles posted around in those geographic areas and to be in those geographic areas to give them that response time. So my anticipation is that in the rural areas, they're still going to achieve this. I don't expect them to run 20 minutes, and that's why we've looked at adding vehicles and where we place them so we can achieve this in those locations. And I think EMS has been very responsive in trying to help us achieve that. But yeah, I agree. There's a lot of calls on 74. It's going to be 5-6 minutes, but still we're focusing on getting this kind of service to every citizen in the county, and I think we're negligent if we don't.
And I'm not suggesting otherwise. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be that way. What I'm suggesting is, I'm trying to understand the thinking in a single county-wide measure, where at one time we were looking at zones. The idea being that if they hit 90% at 1429, that the 90% of the calls, those 90% could be in a single area or could be in a single half of the county, whereas then the remaining 10%, I'm saying that metric, what you're trying to achieve, I'm not so sure a single county-wide response time meets that metric meets that desire. I'm not sure they go together exactly, is what I'm saying.
Well, we clearly
That's
have
what I'm trying to
financial,
understand.
we have financial constraints. I mean, if we had an unlimited budget, we could fix that and everybody would get 5-minute response time with the numbers. But that's not physically attainable. But I think we've worked toward it. We've had this conversation. Those calls that exceed our expectation, Tim and I talked, and I think we said you're going to review the ones to find out why, and continually focus on achieving that. And I agree with Mr. Bailey said that, you know, this is a starting point. I really think everybody here anticipates that as we get the process down more and get staffing up, we're going to continue to improve. But there's not a citizen in this county that doesn't deserve that.
And I completely agree with that idea. What I'm suggesting is, the EMS is not suggesting you wouldn't try to have the fastest time possible. I think everybody understands we want to do that. But under a single countywide metric, you're not ensuring the folks in the rural areas, because they may not be 90% of the calls, are going to get that same level of service. What I'm suggesting is, I think maybe if you had two metrics on a response time for the rural area to ensure they get a comparable response time, you almost need a second metric for that group. Because right now under this metric, if 90% of the calls are in one geographic area or one geographic portion of the county, then the remainder of the county won't get necessarily may not get that same level of response, and they can still achieve that metric and not have an issue. That's all I'm saying.
I understand the mathematics of your statement, but I don't think that's their intent. Is that a fair statement, Tim?
Yes, I mean, what we did is when we, as a committee, we addressed some of the key questions and some of the concerns that the committee had and the citizens had, and that was one of them, is to, instead of zones, the committee wanted a overall, and that's what we addressed. So that's what we worked toward.
I think what he's saying too, Jeff, the 90% of the calls on the outside of that corridor, he needs to meet it 90% of the time, 1429 seconds. And that's what he says he can do. So I understand what you're saying, but if you divide it into 3 zones, I don't know, right now maybe that's maybe not the thing to do, but I think down the road it's something that could be looked at. You just have your overall still shouldn't change with the one zone. I understand you got your percent of your calls in a certain area. None of those calls are going to be 1429. They should be 5-6 minutes. But in the rural area where we were trying to meet and establish, I think Eddie Cathy made a statement, we have a limit on calls for the whole county. And what Tim is saying, they'll meet that 1429 seconds to all areas of the county. But you won't take that area and divide it in just so you can say 90% percentile.
And quite candidly, Jeff, there have been conversations that people have approached me individually on the street once when they learned that I was a part of this group. And, as a practitioner in the field, as well as, people expressing their concerns, there is the business model for an argument for the multiple zone response, but there's also the ethical model, because, we have been the ones out in the field waiting on that truck to get there, needing that truck to get there. And, that would be my concern, is that we believe that with this particular performance standard, we can make the best assurance that we can to everyone in the county that we're going to get help there as quickly as we can.
And I completely agree with that statement. And I'm not suggesting that people in the rural areas should get something more than 1429. What I'm telling you, statistically speaking, and how this works mathematically, and trust me on this, because this is what we do, that metric is not going to ensure that. And if everybody understands that looking at it, I don't have a problem with that. But I'm telling you, at countywide 1429, mathematically speaking, 90% of the calls can achieve that, and that can leave out the whole other 10%, which may be an entire geographic area of the county. And that's, if we understand that and go in eyes wide open to that, then I don't have a problem with that. But I feel a duty to tell you, as I deal with these statistics, this is what we do. that that's what that metric does. So if we're all agreed on that, then that's fine. But I just want to be real clear and upfront, because when this contract comes up and this is the metric or the standard, then that's it. It's what we're going to do. I think that's the logic behind the original 3-zone approach, was to ensure each of the zones got a base level of service versus an entire, being able to achieve it in one area and cover you for the entire county. So, I won't belabor the point, but I just wanted to make that.
I'd like to speak to the committee from experience. Tim's already told us, and we understand the intent is that they'll review everything. Jeff sees it only as looking at a statistical number. Tim sees it as looking at the whole performance of the system, that they will review every call that exceeds the 1429. Now, what we do on our response standard is we review every call. We understand the statistical number, but we also, in the fire response, we also look at every call that exceeds that number. I think the safeguard for the protection of the people beyond the 74 corridor is that Tim and the EMS group are going to look at every call. That seems valid to me to start with, and then if Tim and his group, after a year's track history or 2 years or whatever your contract period winds up being, says, look, we're making 90% on that corridor, but we're getting nowhere near it on this. These are the reasons why, and this is how we adjust it, which goes back to what Mr. Plyler said. You got to have a starting point. You got to know where you're working from. You got to offer everybody a goal that Union County is trying to achieve at 1429. There is a measure in there to protect the people outside that corridor. Tim's group will review every call. I understand your concerns, but to belabor the point and say we got to make it into multiple zones, all we'll get is more numbers. The proof in the pudding is to look at the individual calls that don't meet the numbers. That's what they're going to do. I see that as a valid way to approach this, and the reason I'm offering up to this committee that is because that's what we've had to do in the fire calls to meet our thing. We've got to look at every one that doesn't meet the criteria and understand why.
So if I may, is that called out in your standard? That would help address what
Review.
Jeff is saying, as well as what Tim and company, or what you guys are saying. Is there anything that you guys have talked about that shows, say, where unit placement would be, that visual, if you will?
We as a department now, we've got measures in place. We review everything. We of course, every department, we have goals that we try to reach, we try to hit. Anything that falls outside of that, we always review so we can better ourselves, so we can reach that. We do that now. We talked about that in the committee meetings. I don't know if it's not on the.
But I think what we're missing is the how. So
Well, this number was derived from the model that Tim gave us on posting of his units. He's telling us that we post the units the way he shows that he can get anywhere in the county in this length of time. You take this number by itself and it doesn't work, but you take it with what the model is that we came up with, and I think it works.
You're trying to, you want to know what type of measures we're going to use to review anything that's over the 90%?
I think what I'm saying is this sounds critical. I don't mean it to come out this way, but let me just be blunt. Okay, what you presented is what you think the goal should be. I'm fine with that. It makes sense that in our county, our goal should be the 1429. I think what we've immediately focused on a metric of how we're going to measure this metric across the county, and what I haven't seen yet is the how piece of it to pull these two together, so that you can put to rest Jeff's concern of, and it's a valid concern, if we go one complete entire county, and that one zone makes all the numbers up, then you're going to skew your statistics for the outer pieces, and that's where I understand where he's talking about the zones, so that zone 1, 2, 3, you just divide them in parallel lines across the county and see a better call spread or statistical spread. But I think what we're missing so far, and I don't know that you've had the time to get to that, is here's how we're going to do it to see if this makes sense.
Have you got his map? Can you get to it?
Well, wait a minute, before you change slides, I think a simple fix to that and the how-to would be every truck, when you go to that map, every truck that you have, then you're reporting that and reviewing it monthly in your monthly reports. That, you know, this truck, 55, I don't even know what you're gonna call, 55 at Sandy Ridge, or 42 at New Salem. You know, so that truck, how many times did it meet 1429? Now, it could be that truck is in Marshall, you know, but still, if you look at it, is that what you're saying, Chief?
Yeah.
If you look at it by trucks, then it gives you that idea. We're saying that the metric that we want to have for the entire county is 1429, but somehow you gotta report that in the review process. So in the monthly report, if we had that, and that data would come from you, Larry, you know, 42 ran 10 calls, and they met 1429, 9 of them.
I think what I'm hearing from, excuse me, Tim has said it can meet 1429 in the county. And what I'm hearing from Jeff, can't do it. So I think Jeff and Tim ought to get together and tell each other why you can't or why you can. And then go from there.
I don't think he's saying you can't.
I'm not saying I
Yeah,
can't.
he's saying that when you try to measure
Maybe I
it.
misunderstood.
Yeah.
I thought you said.
Yeah, what he's saying is when you try to measure it, the numbers are gonna be skewed based on the call volume in different areas. So if you do that by truck, then that addresses the call volume in different areas. And I think, I mean, that's how we do it. In, you know, in the fire service, we look at each truck and what they're, even the multi-company responses, you're looking at each truck's response time to get your effective force. So I think the way to address that is that when you're measuring that, the how-to that Chief Canuck was talking about is by individual truck, and that addresses the 90% in the rural at New Salem and the 90% on the corridor.
And what Tim is saying is each one of his trucks will meet that 1450.
Right, and then if they don't, if he sees that that's a problem, then, you know, you know, we need to make adjustments to the system, but you have to manage all of that.
What I have to come back to is that when we first made this committee was started, we had a list in the Future Metrics Committee, we had a list of concerns, and one of them was one response time.
That's correct.
So what I did as EMS is that I took that information and the concerns, and I went back and built a model that will address at a response time at this, where we're gonna be posted. And not only were the concerns just the response times. Response times, employee comfort as crew comforts instead of being on, there was a list, and I have the list here, I dig it out of my stack of paperwork. But the concerns, that's what we did, and we built this model. When it come down to it, I said, what we can do is we can place these units throughout the county in these strategic locations in departments, and we can obtain a 1429. If you allow me to move the units the way I see fit. And that is our goal, is to meet this 1429 throughout the county. Are there gonna be areas that's gonna fall through that? Of course. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you it's not. But our goal, I understand what you're saying is that if you break it down into areas, you can measure it better than you can in an overall. That what we can do is say, well, we had 2,000 calls this month, and we met those 2,000 calls in, you know,
Yeah. And I
response
think,
time 90% of the time.
I don't think that's changed
Right.
from the outset, what, you know, the list of concerns that you had. I don't think that's changed. We still want the
Right.
one zone. But I think for a measurement purpose is what I'm understanding and what I'm hearing from Chief Canuck and everybody, for a measurement purpose, If you just say that we're gonna measure each individual truck, or take a look at each individual trucks, and if you look at your map, your plan, in theory, 90% of the time, you shouldn't meet that.
Right.
Barring
We-
10% is when they're
We
on call.
currently look at our trucks now, and we do that based out in grid and how many calls and the response times to those.
And I think that's the how-to.
Yeah, that's the
That's
black
the,
box.
that's the how you're gonna
Yeah.
measure, that's what
Yeah.
he's asking for.
Yeah, so
And I
you
think
have the
if you
map
do an
that
individual
shows
truck, that addresses,
how you're gonna initiate
Just
with
the
your
trucks.
trucks, and then
Correct.
that's what visually I would like to see, because it gives you, not
We got two
necessarily-
conversations, I'm sorry, I can't hear.
I'm saying that with the black box is what's missing, all right? When we originally started talking about it, there was the impetus that the units would be placed along the corridor, so now everybody's got that picture in their mind.
Right.
You could tell me, and again, I'm not saying that you are, but you could tell me that we're gonna meet 1429 by running one down 74. Well, I know you can't do that, you physically can't do that. So the piece that's missing, and I think we pull all this together, is to display the map, to show that model visually.
it's coming.
And that's what I was trying to get at earlier. We may not have given your team time to present this. So that's where I was trying to help. Let's get to the visual part, and I think we'll call on the conversation, if you will, or at least have a better understanding of where we're going.
Okay.
Kind of like the spaghetti sauce commercial, chief, it's in there.
Yeah, and so I'm ready to see the ingredients.
Okay, with regard to the proposed performance goals, obviously, number one, the first one is the shoot time, which is defined as the time from the period of time between the dispatch of the call to the point at which the crew checks en route. The group recommends an initial performance goal of 90 seconds for 90% of all emergency calls. That is consistent with NCCEP policy, that wheels must be rolling within 90 seconds of 90% of the time. There was significant discussion within the group on emphasizing improvement in that time. And it's one of those things that EMS believes, and I've got to state this correctly, EMS believes that given time that they can achieve operational efficiencies and improvements that would enable them to improve that, to shorten that time potentially from 90 seconds. But we had to have a place to start. And 90 seconds is consistent with national standards. So we would propose that as the initial standard for performance goal. Are there any questions with regard to that?
I believe, Mr. Chairman, that was for the first year.
For the first year, right. Right, yeah, the intent is to review that particular criteria each year. And as I said, EMS will seek operational efficiencies to try to shorten that time. Because obviously that's where you can actually shorten that 1429 window potentially and increase or decrease that response time even more. Second performance goal, the criteria or the performance goal was paramedic skill retention, which is absolutely vital. We have to make sure that we've got a good standard of care in the field, and they have the EMS has committed to helping monitor and maintain that. As you see, we have 3 primary skills listed in the graphic with year 1, year 2, and year 3 benchmarks. These are in excess. I might point out to the group that these numbers are actually in excess of national standards. So they're actually striving to do better than what is nationally recognized. And I would commend their commitment to do that. Does anybody have any questions on performance goal number 2, paramedic skill retention? The definitions of each of those categories that you see over there. Third criteria on the proposed performance goals is that of customer and patient satisfaction. I distributed a graphic to you, if you will look at the color chart document that displays the, and I'll see if I can pull it up here. I don't think I had put it on here. Because it was a separate attachment, I can't display it on the screen, but you have it in front of you. Basically, you know, EMS strives for a target overall impression of at least 95% positive or favorable for all of their patient contacts. We felt it important that they strive for that same level with the citizens of Union County, and you know, in our conversations, our objective was that they strive for continual improvement. You know, to shoot for 96, to shoot for 97, we had to have a basic baseline to make sure that the perception of their delivery of service to the citizens remain positive. And they are willing to commit to a 95% evaluation rate, so we would commend them for that. Any questions with regard to customer patient satisfaction? Mr. Lucas?
We feel comfortable with that.
The fourth performance goal concerns hospital turnaround times, just basically being able to place the units back in service. The logic here is the sooner that you can release a unit from an active call and get it turned around and back in service, you know, that contributes to their continued ability to meet these response windows. Current NCCEP policy recommends an EMS back in service time of 30 minutes. And we have adopted that criteria for 90% of our hospital transports. A 30-minute window, 30-minute return to service window. Any questions with regard to performance goal number 4? And the final one deals with the unit availability, which is always a point of concern. Based on the proposed deployment that we will talk about just in a few minutes here, the minimum, we believe that the minimum unit availability should rest at least 11 transport units during the day and 9 units at night, 90% of the time by July 1st, 2015. The reason that July 1st, 2015 qualifier is in there is because of the fact that you know, it will be necessary for them to add equipment. They currently have staffing that they need to fill. There will be some spin-up time associated with their capability to meet this particular performance goal. And so after deliberation with both hospital and county personnel, it was the group's pleasure to recommend or to provide that July 1st, 2015 window. Are there any questions with regard to unit development? Mr. Chairman, that was our original mandate, the performance standard and the performance goals. I do have some additional information with regard to the hows and whys, if you prefer us to present that now. Or
I think that would be a good idea if you put up your distribution map and your plan. Are you prepared to do that?
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
Okay, good.
As we said earlier, one of the things that, as we got into the process, on the concept of a single response zone. You know, our own, and I want to commend Union County's staff. They had already done significant research into it as well. They had an idea. We solicited an idea from Union EMS. When we put the two side by side, they were remarkably similar. And in terms of how we can accomplish this single zone response with that response time. And Chief, here's where kind of the rubber meets the road with the. We did two comparisons of the original county response, and then we did the original EMS proposal. Now you'll see 13 minutes indicated here. That is travel time. 13 minutes reflects actual travel time. If you add the 90-second shoot time that we spoke of earlier, that calculates to the 14:29 overall response time. So as you can see, the blue dots, the individual blue dots represent equipment placement by EMS or transport truck stationing by EMS. Some of them for, and again, some of them take advantage of facilities that are already in place. Some of them partner with the local fire departments. You know, there occasionally will be opportunities or the necessity for them to position or just statically park a vehicle at a particular location. But through that, and Mr. Adams, jump in and help me if you have comments. But the idea here is that they will have the management authority to place these units at any given time wherever they feel wherever they feel necessary to be able to maintain that 14:29 response time.
If I can speak up, and maybe this will help out some Kelly. On the EMS side, the yellow dots, as you might say, are the initial deployment locations throughout the county. The lighter blue dots represents and hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn, I think around 27 fire departments we have in the county. Some stations, some being, you know, the satellite stations and stuff. Those also will be utilized as the system becomes busy or stressed. We utilize those also as move-up locations to attempt to maintain that 14:29 throughout the county. That's what we'll be utilizing there. The county area, as you can see, they're somewhat similar. One needed point I want to make is we had one area down in Rough Edge that would be a posting location. Chief Getty's already offered up, I think they have a satellite station about a mile up the road, so we can utilize that. So that just hadn't been changed in the thing. I've run the times, and they're just like we can do that. That's our attempt. This is what I can say when the committee came together, and we had to throw something out, and the county, county along with Mr. Teague submitted their proposal, and of course, you know, I thought it would be beneficial for us to say this is what we can do, and to strive to do that. Does that help here?
It does, but explain what the light blue dots mean. If, you know, explain how that's going to work. If one of the yellow dots are going on a call, what's going to happen?
If the yellow dot's going on the call, what we will do is we will move similar trucks. We may take one that's, let's say the Sandy Ridge area truck. If we've got a Griffin Road truck there, we're going to move it up. We'll move it up to another station. We may move it halfway between the stations. We're going to have, but that's one of the biggest concerns that when we have in committee meetings is that you're going to have to allow me as manager of the EMS system the flexibility to move my trucks. And that's the only way we will be able to achieve this. Is that, which one?
Yes, that helps me out a lot.
I think you also, you demonstrated with your last comment that there are going to be vehicles out in the geographic areas to maintain that 1429. And I totally understand Jeff's comment on statistical numbers and averages, but you could also say we're going to do 1429 and maybe we don't go as fast on 74. Either one could apply. I mean, it's just a statistical, but I think what he's demonstrated is the effort to keep ambulances out in the community, even the rural communities, to protect our citizens. And
I can give you, if you roll it up a little bit more. This is night, which is just a variable difference there. Roll up to the next slide. And we'll go, and I think you can look at this. This is what we, a lot of times, what we look at is our demand. Instead of a call volume type thing, is the demand on service. And with these vehicles and units, allowing me the availability to move the units and rearrange some of the start times instead of getting away from everybody starts at 8 o'clock and 8 to 8.
There's a laser right there.
Okay. You can provide me the ability to move my trucks. We may, you know, what we're looking at is 14-day, 11-night. Well, sometimes, you know, if you're looking at between days and nights, we may have, some days we may have a fewer at middle of the night, 4 o'clock in the morning, then we may, you know, we may have 17 or whatever during a time. That's going to allow us to continue to keep that 1429.
Okay, so if I may.
Okay.
So I understand your demand, and I'll let you go back to the map, please.
I should have said, you got it.
One more. Just-
Okay.
Just hit the button that says comment. It's really good.
Yeah, I'm better with a gun than him.
All right, so to try to help address Jeff's concern, again, we know that it's going to be a dynamic moving model. So getting back into Jeff's concern of the corridor or the concentration of units skewing the hour bands, if you will. If you go into a little more detail again into how you're going to be looking at the 90th percentile, if you're looking at it as a complete county, then you are again going to skew the numbers. But I think from what Johnny was saying, if you go to the units or even to maybe looking at the grids, I know you're going to look at every call, but when we get into contractual verbiage, that's where his concern is going to come into play. You can promise to look at every call, and I'm 100% sure you will, but from a contractual standpoint, now I'm going to play the other side. How do I hold your feet to the fire, you know, when we've given you a ability to pad your numbers because you know that the majority of your calls are within the 74 corridor. And that would then skew what we're delivering to the citizens at the upper and lower areas. So I think maybe adjusting the way that 1429 or the 90th percentile is, well, let me rephrase that. Let's go into how you're going to look at the 90th percentile. How are you going to determine that? Are you going to look at it countywide, by trucks, by grid, by what to get to that point? Let me ask the question.
I think the plan is to look at it countywide, but back to, I think Johnny's comment, in the monthly report, we could report out by truck if needed, but the overall measure or performance standards countywide, but we can report on a monthly basis by individual truck.
As what we're doing now, and I understand what you're saying, but you know, this is what I was tasked to do. Now, you know, and as far as the measuring, we will take that into consideration. Of course, our main objective is 1429 for everybody in the county. Is some of them going to fall out of that? Of course, can't help that. But we're going to do our due diligence. We will track and measure Is there measurements in place now as far as in the contractual thing? I don't think so. I think the only thing that's stated now is the response time is 14:29. Okay, in the agreement, or will be.
Will be, I mean, that's what we're.
Will be,
Yeah, that's what we're doing now. So
Will be,
that's-
I'm sorry, will be. So, our group will look at each individual truck. We got a station at 42, and that's gonna be through reporting relationships with Curtis, Mr. T, and of course, I think Jay, on that side, if we've fallen short. We're gonna be doing this on a yearly basis for the next 3 years. If we need to come back and rearrange and look at different ways to do it, we can do that thing. But this is what the committee, this is their concerns, and this is what they wanted to see. And this is what I provided.
Along these same lines, when you look at the 90th percentile, 1429, with 14 trucks, and then we're saying unit availability is 11, 90% of the time by July 15th, right?
Yeah.
So that's gonna play into, those numbers too. Which would be, if you had 2 trucks or 3 trucks out of service, where are they gonna be?
Right.
You know, so,
As far as, like you said, a measurement device to measure the data, right now, I don't have anything in place to do that. Other than going and looking at our specific trucks and the call volumes in the area that they're at, and looking at the time and the dispatch and response times that we meet in those areas right now. With the growing of more trucks, if we provide 3 more trucks during the day, and the flexibility to provide to move those hours of those trucks, I feel sure that we can do this. But as far as a data point,
Yeah, and what my point, I guess, there is to, in order to make sure that we're delivering it countywide.
Correct.
And and you take into account the skewing of the numbers because of the call volume, I think that's still, I'm struggling to see the difference between what we started with and where we are now, from a statistical standpoint. I agree you can't have 1429 everywhere, but if I'm holding your feet to the fire for the 1429, and we've not taken into account the bell curve, if you will, for the 74 corridor, maybe somehow derating those numbers a little bit to try to average and keep Mike's attention there. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I know you gotta take into account the 74 corridor and lessen that impact. Otherwise, you'll still be back into, as the day gets busy and we pull back into the core, which we should, don't get me wrong, but I don't know, I'm struggling to try to get my thought out. And because I know it's a difficult thing to do, but how do you still help maintain the 2 corners as you're starting to pull into the corridor? Maybe that's the missing point is, okay, as we start going into status level 8, 7, 6, 5, and we're reducing down, how is that going to pull units in?
where they're coming from.
Where are they coming from? Because I understand that if you're down in one truck, you gotta get that in the center of the county to give the best response throughout the county. You can't have it sitting at Lanes Creek or at New Salem or at Staplings. I know it's got to move, but maybe that's the next piece is some of the definition of the model of how the move-ups occur so that you can still keep those 1429s even when the call volume is getting heavy in the center. Is that making sense?
Well, I think the reality is gonna be, at the end of the day, unfortunately, because of the geography of Union County, that there are gonna be certain bands or certain areas of Union County that are not gonna be, it's unreasonable and financially not feasible to attain 100% 1429, or even 90% 1429. And there's some expectation, I think, and I think this is the same thing with sheriff's calls for deputies, that the further area, more rural area, though, there's an understanding that when you move to that rural area that there are some things that you're trading off. Some service levels that you're going to get a little different service level, not good or bad. I'm just saying, statistically, it's the reality of the geography of the county. And as you start to pull, this is the starting point. But as you start to have units go out and you start to redeploy to try to keep that time where the majority of your calls are going to be, so that you help the most people and you protect the most people, they're going to be the outer bands. And under this measure and under this deployment, you're getting back to kind of where you were, or where we were originally with the measure. And I don't think in the county it's feasible to say, realistically feasible to say everybody's going to get the exact same template of service. Is just not a reality in anything we do here at the county. And that's across the board. It's because we're very geographically diverse. So, and I see this, it doesn't necessarily assuage my concern. I think as you kind of go through moving your trucks around, you're going to start here, there's going to be accidents, you're going to move, there's going to be calls, you're going to move around those people in that band, that other 10%, their call response time is going to be much higher. And we don't have a metric to ensure that that's capitated. So.
I think everybody understands there's gonna be times when that's gonna happen, and it's not gonna be a 1429. But the only way to solve that would be by 6 ambulances, and I don't think, Jeff, I don't think we can do that, do you?
I don't think we can.
Okay.
I want to be clear
Yeah.
for the folks watching at home that we're talking 1429, but the reality is there are bands in the county that aren't going to get 1429 probably ever. I mean, the reality of it is the move up.
I don't agree with that.
I don't agree with that either.
We can look at it, but we can.
We're taking other measures as well too. One of the things that we're doing too is emergency calls is a piece of their business. They have to respond to other activities such as interfacility transfers, and so we're putting a limit to that. We're gonna make sure that we have units available, and the more units we have available, so we're gonna put a limit. You can't do the non-emergency transports when your availability is reduced. So we're putting a limit on that. That's going to help encourage that. Like I said, the other models we've seen in the past have pulled everything in, had posting locations, and every one of these locations are just as important as the others. And I think that's significant in the sense that you get down to Sandy Ridge or Newtown, those are important locations and are actually where the largest amount of our population is. So I think we're enhancing what we currently do today. We're going to have to ramp up to it because one, you can't get the staff fast enough, and we've got to supply some equipment for them down run. But the nice thing about it is that in July 1st, before July 1st, we're going to sit down and we're going to look at what it's going to take to continue to improve. I think if we give them the right tools, because I don't think his intent is, man, I can slough off in the outer locations because I'm going to respond faster. That's not your style.
Right. That's our commitment,
Yeah.
and it's really the commitment of the EMS teammates. We want to provide the very best service wherever you are in the county, and that's our commitment. I think this is a good starting point. I think we should be looking at how we're providing service to all areas of the county. I think that should be included in the monthly report, but I think this is a metric that the committee felt comfortable with. But whatever the metric is, it's about doing the right thing and the commitment. You couldn't have a more passionate group of individuals than Union EMS. They're going to do the right thing.
And Billy, I understand what you're saying is, your concern is that with the reduction of resources, that the concentration of those units will still continue along the 7-foot corridor as the unit availability reduces. but I see, having worked in a major, you know, in a metropolitan area in the Western New York area with private ambulance service, with this kind of time, with these kind of time frame constraints that, and we had the same similar situation, as you hit that status 2 or that status 3, you pushed your units away from the 70, you pushed them away from that corridor so that they could meet, so that that corridor was on the edge of that 1429 timeframe. So that way you're pushing your resources away from the center line so that you do continue to get as good a coverage or the best type of coverage in a rural area as you do in your concentrated heavy zone.
Yeah, and that's the missing piece here, and that's why I'm just trying to help
I think
pull the two together. I think if you can, if that was demonstrated,
right.
I know you got it in your head of how you're gonna do this, and that's what I was trying to pull out is
As opposed, I think we're coming back down to post and how are you gonna meet this? Well, you got to understand also in the world of EMS and also law enforcement, any type of approach station, that's a moving target.
Absolutely.
You have no, I can't build you a say that this is where we're gonna move this one, and this one, and this one, because it changes daily, hourly, and I can't, that's my.
I think what Chief Canuck's asking for is if, like I said earlier, if Unionville's out, are you gonna move New Salem over to the line somewhere in between? Or are you gonna move 50, if 51's out, are you gonna move 59 up?
If New Salem's out, I mean, if Unionville's out, it may be the New Salem truck, it may be the Henry Bridge truck, it may be a base truck.
But I think that's kind of the mindset he's trying to get, is for you to explain how the system would move in a perfect world.
Okay.
We know that it's not a perfect world.
Correct.
We understand that. That's the 10%. You know, so I think if you could explain, and like you said, I know you got it in your head because we've talked about it. But you know, if you have a move up plan.
Correct.
When y'all developed this data and you said we could do this 1429, y'all also developed a coverage plan.
Correct.
You know, how you're gonna move your unit availability. If this one's out, we're gonna do this. If this one's out, we're gonna do that. And we can still, just like Gary said, you know, you may move the Henry Bridge truck because 51's 1429 may be all the way to Lawyers Road.
Right.
And so you can move Henry Bridge's truck closer to Unionville and broaden the 1429 area of response. So we know that you've developed that deployment plan and how you're going to move it around when that you know needs to be moved.
And with the deployment plan, you have to understand it's never going to be the same, because we have to always go back. We always go back and revisit our data, our numbers, our calls, because a lot of this is, you know,
based off historical data.
And so, and I understand what you're saying is that, can I show you all of that now? No, but we have that in plans that we will redeploy our units, we will move those around. Specifically the call volume, not necessarily would it be on 74 or, you know.
Billy, if I understand you correctly, what you'd like to see is a matrix spreadsheet showing that, okay, if this unit's out, what's going where?
And unfortunately, you can't really get that detail.
Well, let me explain what I'm asking. Let me go right ahead. Again, it's trying to pull what I know that you know and what I know that he's thinking together. You know, because I've worked in, all right, you know, I worked in your environment, I've worked in the dispatching environment, I worked in the fire environment, so I know where we're coming from here, and from work, I know statistics and how things lay out. So I'm trying to pull the non-statistic, if you will, to the statistic world, and that's where my struggle is right now. But Gary came up with exactly what I was trying to get at earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to know every move that's going to be made, but there's some generalities that you can pull into, say, this is system status 11. We have 11 trucks available.
Right.
All right. As we start, if the top of the county were to go out with a major wreck on 218, and that would take out all 4 of your upper quadrant areas. So the plan would be you would take these and they would move to the side. And then, you would then know in your head, well, if the same happened on the south, and they would move back.
Correct.
Now, the next step, that would be with full system status. Now we're down to, say we're at half system status. Okay, well, I know that, to Gary's point, you're not going to come down and line everybody up on 74. It may be on a mile, 2.5 miles on the other side of 74.
Correct.
So it's not to show every example, but just an idea of, okay, we're full, we're starting to get a little bit busy, and oh my, we're really busy. And see how that map morphs, because that then allows to put a little bit of humanality into the statistic world of, okay, that makes sense with the truck placed at, I don't know, Sykes Mill 601, that's the first place that pops into my head. And I can probably get 30 to 90% of the calls during that
Correct.
hour and a half, because in the standards, current standards, we know that once a unit is dispatched, you're gone for an hour and a half on average. Not even 90% of the time, but 90% of the time or average, however you want to look at it. So I know that for an hour and a half, I'm in a system status of something different.
Correct.
Okay, that may be where my percentages start coming down. I guess that's just what I'm trying to pull out of the group is, I know you know what you're doing, I have 100% confidence, but for the people that haven't been in it, help us understand a little bit of how, when we get to a quarter, a half, or 3/4, just things would kind of change a little bit. And again, understanding it's a dynamic model. Dynamic in itself means it's going to change. But there's still, statistically speaking, there's still going to be some semblance of staticness, if you will, based on call volume as we go down in these levels. You see where I'm headed?
And like I said, I'm not prepared, I don't have a
That's fine.
prepared thing, but if you want to look at, let's say, Marshall truck goes out and we're busy, all right, we got a Marshall truck out, we may have a Lanes Creek truck out. They're here together running at 1050. We may move this base truck, we'll move it into Wingett's area. When we move it into Wingett's area with the 1429 response time, this area becomes shaded. You see what I'm saying? It can already reach all the way to the 74, to the county line. We can also move, we'll be able to move like a Sandy Ridge truck over to Allen's Crossroads. Not Allen's, but Stack Road, excuse me, Stack Road here. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
And if a Unionville truck's out, let's say if a Unionville truck and the New Salem truck is on 218 and Love Mill 1050 or whatever, we're going to move a 56 or a Station 3 truck would come up to Station 22. Okay, or we can move, if all of these trucks are available, we can move that Henry Bridge truck maybe near Fairview. Maybe not right at Fairview, but to provide that coverage. Is that what you're?
Yes.
Okay.
That's where I'm going.
Okay.
I think if you can show the
Okay. I'm sorry.
This is full, here's where we're at 3/4, here's where everything's half full now, and then the worst case, when we're down to, I think you get this, in the new model, you should be down to system status, what, 1, hardly ever now?
Correct. Well,
Or
yes.
hard
Predicted, yeah.
predicted hardly. So just try to show the worst case scenario, and that way you have that spread between, to understand that in fact, we're not going to put 150 units out here to give everybody 5 minute response time, but on the same token, here, 90% of the time, we're at system status 4, and here's how it would look. That's, I think if you will get that, then that helps. Also say that this is the plan to help meet that countywide number.
And we currently have a deployment plan that communications utilize along with our operations supervisors. We do that now. Of course, with the addition of the trucks, that's going to be rearranged to provide those outlying areas, the 14. That's what we're striving for. That's what we're going to strive to do the whole time. And you're saying, all right, the ultimate, the system status 1, which would be 1 truck available. Of course, that would be, if everybody can see with the EMS proposal, that's somewhere around what it says, 13 minutes in the city of Monroe.
Yeah.
And that's where it's gotta be. If we're down to one truck, that's where it's gotta be. It's-
Right, so, but that, again, that's all I'm asking for is if you, I think that would help an understanding from the general community standpoint to know that, okay, the plan makes sense. And the plan, and that still gives us the ability to do the 14-minute.
Right.
I know that on 742, it ain't gonna happen when you're down to system status 4.
Right.
But to just point, when you move to 742, that's it's a known risk, if you will.
Correct.
So anyway, that's what I'm just trying to help pull that together.
And did that help, or do you want something more than?
That was gonna be my follow-up.
Yeah, we'll get down to what we want more here in a minute.
Okay.
But you know, one of the things we've seen demonstrated in the last couple of months, because when we implemented AVL and the rotation to the 12-hour shift, we saw a dramatic improvement. AVL, what we have today is limping along, I guess. Is that a fair statement, Curtis?
Yes.
But, you know, also we're implementing a stronger, more powerful AVL that Sharon and her staff will be able to manage and look at these and assist with these movements.
Right.
And the good thing is that, you know, if that ambulance is coming back from Charlotte or from Matthews or wherever, you know, they can assist with the deployment of that on too. So I think it's going to help. I think it's going to give us more availability along the 74 corridor, which used to require more ambulances that maybe have less because we utilize them more on a, I hate to use the word dynamic model, but I mean, it's, but it's a fact you got somebody returning down, and before you weren't sure if they were crossing the county line or you know, coming through Indian Trail or whatever, but you know that now. And that's going to give them the opportunity, so that it's not just, I appreciate his model that he's doing and how he's trying to protect all the areas as much of the time as possible, but we are doing some enhancements as well to give them tools to better manage the resources they do have.
Okay.
Just before we move on, I don't think it's been noted, and you made up a good point, there's people watching at home. To clarify, 1429 is around the Code 3 Status 1 calls.
Yes.
I don't know that we put that, I don't see it written here, I don't know that that's been stated.
And
Just
that's
wanted
the
to make
important
sure
point.
that was-
That 1429 is for emergency transport calls. That's, you know, that's not a routine transfer, or that's not a non-emergency transfer. That is for a priority emergency transport.
Well, I think that this model gives the EMS the flexibility to do the maneuverability of the units, and after 6 months, we'll have some data that you either say it's working or it isn't working, and then you can adjust. I agree with you. There's going to be adjustments, but you gotta have some data over a period of time to see what's working and what isn't. So
That's an excellent point. You have to accumulate some empirical information before you can consistently work, before you can constantly improve it, so.
Well, also, I have to say the hospitals had their hands tied without a contract, and we've gotten past that. And there's also anticipation of staff coming on right now that'll help enhance that as well. So there's a lot of things going on that's going to be positive to this, to make this more achievable.
Yeah, without a doubt, this is an enhancement to the historical service that we've provided, because we're adding, the county is really investing in EMS, which we appreciate, so we can provide a better service.
Okay, before we get too off topic here, let's revisit the proposed performance standards. I think the first thing we need to do as a group is we need to determine if we're okay or we're willing to accept these 5 performance goals. And I'm not gonna, I don't want to caveat to that is I'm not going to say how we're going to measure that, because that's what we're going to ask for from you guys next, is is exactly what Chief Canuck was talking about, you know, come back with the plan. We don't want to manage EMS, and I think that was from the outset, that was this group's thought process. I just want to give Tim the tools and let him operate the system. But I think, you know, from a standpoint of all of us in this room, we have a pretty good idea of what it's going to look like, but for the folks at home, to try to explain to Chief Canuck's explanation of how the system's going to work. And, you know, so I think that's what we're going to ask for, but we need to know from the Future Metrics group, we're going to try to get approve these 5 goals, and then we're going to have to figure out how we're going to measure those. And I think that'll be over the next week when you guys come back and tell us how you're going to do it. You know, the nuts and the bolts, how the system's going to work. So
Johnny, if I just I think it's kind of defined how we're going to measure. I'm not sure if I understand, other than the model, how we move. I think it's defined clearly on what we're doing.
some of them it is, yeah. But I think the single countywide response zone with a total response time no more than 1429. I think we need to do some more explaining on that, on how that's going to work.
So that's the performance standard.
Yeah,
So
the performance standard.
the motion's just for the goals,
right?
and then we'll address
And
the
then we'll
standard.
address the standard. Yeah. So, are there any more discussion? Actually, I guess I need a motion before we can really move forward. Motion to.
Mr. Chairman, I move we accept and present the performance goals as presented.
I'd like to request we vote on them individually, please.
Okay.
And we're gonna vote on the 6, right?
5.
Well, you're gonna go 1429 plus the other
We're gonna do
5.
that separate.
Okay.
We'll do 1429 separate. Right now, we're talking about the 5 proposed performance goals. Then we're gonna talk about 1429 after that. So, do you still want to vote on them individually?
I don't need on the 5.
Okay, I didn't think so.
I didn't know Curtis did because of the committee yesterday. No, I'm fine there. Okay. Sorry.
So we need a second.
Second.
All right, is there any further discussion on the 5 performance goals? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the performance goals as presented? All those in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Now, the 1429, the performance standard. And I think before we can approve that or whatever, I think we need to have that, you know, kind of like what the chief was talking about, an explanation so that everybody at home can understand what we're trying to do and how, kind of a overview of how that system would work.
All right.
And I know this is all you, Tim. I say it's the committee, but I realize it's all you. That's the hot seat. You know, unfortunately, and please don't misunderstand that we're trying to micromanage you or manage EMS service. We just want an explanation so that it's clear to everybody as to how.
Hopefully I'll come back with you and give you, and paint you a better picture or a more appropriate picture of how, as the system becomes busy, I'm really not gonna, hopefully not gonna overwhelm you with a lot of data, but I'm gonna pick some points throughout. You know, if we're here, this is what we'll do. If we're here, this is what we'll do. And I'll try to show you on a map, this is the coverage.
And I don't know that that's even really a Future Metrics group job. Like I said, it's
Right.
going to be you. Maybe we could get Chief Canuck to work with you on that.
I think what he's alluding to, Johnny, is the fact that what he's just shown us before, that simulation of moving ambulance to ambulance, but he can't tell you per se, because the ambulance that he's gonna move there may have to move because of an accident somewhere else. So it's gonna be
Yeah.
hard for him to designate where the ambulance
Yeah.
is gonna
Well,
come from.
and we're not
And I-
asking him
Yeah.
to get that.
I understand,
specific
I'm gonna
information.
provide examples of the system as it may move morphs.
How it
And
moves.
I can get back with that.
It's so
Could you put some
fluid,
numbers?
it's hard to.
Could you put some numbers?
But we just want some examples,
If you take a
and
map,
that'll
say,
maybe will
these
clear
are
up some
these numbers
explanation
over
on,
here, just-
the 1429,
I'm gonna base
as
it
long
on
as we're working off the
1429
edges.
and you'll see I can paint a picture,
That's what
a
we need.
map better than anything else.
And I think that's important, so I don't know that that's really something that we need to pass off to you, because really that's Tim.
Okay.
And Chief Canuck will be happy to work with you on that.
All right. And I
He
will
told me
do
that a while ago. So I think if we can get that back, then that'll be the explanation on the 1429. And at that time, we would entertain that single countywide response zone, and once we see how it's gonna work and how your plans are to meet that in the outer bands. Okay? Any
So,
further?
I assume we're gonna, Monday night, we have to do
Yeah.
where we're at. So we're still gonna present the 1429 the way we understand it, the way it's been explained today.
Yeah, that would be our progress to this point. It would still be that we would present 1429. Well, I tell you, we could approve that as the performance standard today, and then see how we're gonna meet that next week, the measurement in that. Does that make sense? Gee, yeah. We could approve the number of 1429, that's our goal. And then show how we're gonna meet that and that, next week. Is there any further discussion on ideas on whether or not we should do that? And I do have to give an update to the county commission on Monday, and it would be good if I had a motion from this group accepting 1429 as the standard,
I make that motion.
even though we're not real sure how we're gonna, I think we're sure, but we just need some clarification on how it's gonna work.
I'll make the motion we approve the 1429 as a performance standard response plan.
Like the minute motion would be for emergency purposes, or for priority.
For emergency calls. So that's all our committee worked on was emergency calls.
I keep forgetting to say that here.
Okay, is there a second to the amended motion? And the motion, let me call this out. The motion on the floor is to accept 14 minutes and 29 seconds countywide to emergency calls only,
The 90th
90%.
90% of the time.
That includes the shoot time and traffic time.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Is there any discussion on the 1429 as the standard, 90% of the time? If hearing none, all those in favor of 1429 or the motion on the floor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. One, or, is there any further questions for the Chairman Bailey?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to take the opportunity to thank my committee. It has been a pleasure and privilege to work with this group of professionals. Very rarely do you ever encounter an environment, particularly with such a sensitive topic as this, where people will set aside professional, personal agendas to work together collaboratively, and this was a prime example of that. For those of you who endured the long sessions, I do want to express my appreciation to you for that, and commend you on your work for this. So, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I would entertain a motion for a 5-minute recess, and then we'll switch over to the report from Mr. Brinker on Technology Committee.
You have that power to do that.
5-minute recess.
Commissioner Helms, can I get you, John, and Jeff real quick?
Okay, call the meeting back to order. And this is the Technology Subcommittee's recommendations that they've gone through and came up with ways or technology that will improve on our system. Mr. Frank?
The Technology Committee met between October 14th and 30th every Tuesday and Thursday. We have been working, for the most part, as a group for probably over 2 years on several different projects that actually ends up fitting into quite a bit of what we've done here as well. It was determined, after reviewing all the different aspects of EMS, the ideas of how the deployment model might come about, and our current examples with the AVL test, that our AVL is probably the #1 issue that we want to address. The connectivity that we have with the AVL system is currently set up where it runs through the computer system, back through the hospital, the firewalls there, and then makes its way to the CAD system. We do find that there are some connectivity issues, and anytime there's a change within the hospital security for their computer system, we have to make some major changes on our side, and the communication isn't always that great, mainly because I'm sure those making the changes at the firewalls at the hospital don't realize there could or may not be an effect on how it would be received with us in communications. We had worked on this then and decided on a solution that would take care of our connectivity issue. Again, the connectivity issue is mainly going to affect how that AVL is rolled out, and we can't dispatch the closest ambulance if the AVL is not working. So that major emphasis has been put on this system. We came up with recommendations to use 2 separate computer devices, one strictly for patient care information and one for mobile data terminal. Mobile data terminal will be connected hardwired to the modem, and the patient care computer and monitors will be connected wireless through the modem. We then also recommend the purchase of a new style modem that will give a dual tunnel back. We've included that in the proposal as well. Again, this gives us a direct connection between the hospital and the patient care computer, which then all that information flows straight back and forth. The secondary device would then be connected directly to CCOM. It avoids the issues of traveling through and worrying about getting the correct settings for the firewall, and will give us then much more accurate, reliable AVL, and also gives them the opportunity to know when they hit the status buttons, they're going to be working.
Larry, can I put my IBM hat on a minute and talk to your firewalls? Because I think the public needs to understand, you're talking about a direct connect for the AVL and everything. When you're going through 5 firewalls like you stated, every time there's a software update to one of those firewalls, it can take the whole system down if it's not coordinated. And I know the firewalls are county and hospital, and that even makes that more difficult. So something as critical as this, having a direct connect will improve our reliability significantly.
And unfortunately, during the testing, well, when we initially tried to hook these up a few years ago, it took us a long time just to be able to get through one firewall, and then we had to go through that whole process again to the next. And the hospital security has to be, the tightest, the best that there is available. So that just makes it that much more difficult. This eliminates that. We can move on, hopefully then, to better connectivity and better, I think we'll have more assurance in the field that their system's going to work. We had discussed the next item, monitoring software. This was something that the administration and EMS said that they needed in order to be able to, on time, immediately know what is happening in the field, know when the statistics aren't being met, to know when an actual run comes in that doesn't meet the performance measurement. We had a couple of suggestions that had been made through the previous reviews, but we also come to find that we actually have that software as part of our CAD system. It is called Ops Center, and it also has a reporting portion that's CSS Web. We did some demonstrations with it, and we were able to see that we can configure it in to any settings that we would like to see. It can notify supervisors and EMS administrators when an incident occurs outside the performance measures, and they have that opportunity then to real time deal with an issue if that needs to be done. Again, this particular software is something that we already have. It's already available, and so we wouldn't have any expense with this particular program. Next item we looked at was positioning software. We have looked at a couple of different software programs that were available in regards to positioning. We had discussion on the run volume that we would be talking about and the overall true cost and benefits then that would be associated with this. Then once we learned that the metrics committee was going to recommend a pre-deployment post program, that then gave us the opportunity to explore, as we had just had the discussion, methods then of prearranged move-ups as opposed to a software program managing the move-ups as we go. We felt that based on the pre-deployment post, this would be the better way to go, is to develop a plan that provides for the move-ups. The EMS administrative offices currently don't have a connection direct to the CAD to where they can gather or observe the information that's available through the CAD. And again, we would have to set up through the network, through the firewalls, within EMS. Then we also have the security end on the CAD. That we had discussed this and believed that for no more cost than there would be involved, and again, the great importance and emphasis that's being put on records management and observation, that we would recommend a direct connection that would come through a separate device in the EMS offices and make connection to the CAD. This would then be dedicated for records management and the Ops Center CSS Web monitoring. The next item, CAD record access. Right now, the way that we provide the reports, the EMS takes the run, and then Greg, if you would go ahead and help us with that.
Be happy to. Each one of our devices on the trucks, at least one of the devices in the trucks, the laptop computers, have access to the CAD. During the process of a call, what we're able to do is go to certain areas of the CAD and get our times from there, which are then manually entered into the computer of our reports. With the CAD records access, also known as the APIs you see here, what it would be able to do would be, we would be able to kind of connect the CAD and be able to drop the demographic information, the times, the run number, things like that, right into our run reports from the day that CCOM gives us.
So the big benefit from this is that the time is going to be automatically downloaded into their report, and so the timing, all times should then be identical, whether it's from the CAD report or it comes from an EMS report. And number two, this should help speed up the opportunity to finish that report out and get back on
Absolutely.
good service.
And the one thing that I just want to mention so that the hospital understands, this is a one-way API. The CAD would push to the PCR. There would be no patient care information coming back across that. So there would not be a HIPAA violation.
And we took that into consideration because we do realize that these things have to be HIPAA compliant for that reason.
This is a more difficult situation than a lot. I mean, we've run into similar situations with DCI and law enforcement, but, you know, the hospital has a network that operates all hospital functions, and then they have the patient care, and now they have the EMS, and we understood that trying to get all that to work and the CAD, this was going to be quite a task. So the best we thought was, as much as we possibly could, was to just, you know, make direct connect and be able to avoid some of the problems there. We had, we've also done a radio processing of the dispatch review. And one of the things that we found with that is that it actually takes a little bit longer to get an EMS dispatch out. We looked at it in comparison to fire and to law enforcement, and there are more steps that go into getting the dispatch to go from the call taker's finished till they hear it in the field. Just the clicks and the things that have to be set up. We have got with Ralph Bartlett, our radio technician, and we're looking, we've got a couple of ways that we're going to streamline that. We talked to Tim yesterday. We've got a couple of ways that we do things because that's how they used to be done, and with some changes on their side in operations, we'll be able to eliminate those steps and hopefully be able to then get that time down on the dispatch. That's not necessarily on the hospital, we understand, but we took this on kind of as a partnership, that knowing that the time from the dispatch, or the time of the call till the time that they arrive, we can have some effect on that both together. So that was where we wanted to look at those pieces. Again, we can't make that change until operationally you make your changes, but we now know that's a goal that we need to be moving toward. Next item is that we had looked at is automated voice dispatch, and what this is that a computer is set up, connected to the radio system as the CAD makes the recommendation to the dispatcher, and the dispatcher then makes selection of the closest available ambulance. They can then click a button, again, eliminating some of the different processes that are involved, and the computer then puts out the call in a consistent, clear voice that will shave at least estimated 6 to 7 seconds off of every dispatch. Now, when we're talking about time, 6 and 7 seconds doesn't sound like very much at all. But in the overall scheme, we believe that going through different parts here, like
having access to CAD so that the dates all automatically download. We shaved a few more seconds, maybe a few minutes. Each time we could shave some more and more off this process is, reducing that time that we get to the scene. It's reducing that hour and a half that they're out every time they have a call. And that was the goal of putting all this together. The different items, like I said, with a few of them, we already had in-house. We didn't have any more additional expense or anything with it in regards to the fact that it existed. One reason that we haven't been doing this for years, these different things that we mentioned, is a lot of it, the vast majority of it wasn't even available until our recent CAD upgrade last spring. And we've been learning as we go, working together, what different things were available and how we can use it. As you have on your handouts, we did go out and try to get an estimate to give you a good faith idea as to what we're proposing and how it financially would impact. Great. Do you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
No, one thing that actually, when we talked about the automated voice dispatch, when we were discussing that, one of the good things we did come up with was the fact that it is going to promote accountability on both sides. And as a group, we felt that was important because, as Larry said, this is going to just continue to enhance what we're trying to do here. So I think, I enjoyed working with both of these guys in the committee because I think we came up with a lot of good ideas that are going to help the service, just period.
Real quick on that, if you look, there's no cost up there for automated voice dispatch. And you can pretty well guess that's not free. It's actually, depends on how you want to roll it out. Could be a significant cost. The thing that we are capable of at this moment is that it is a 911 eligible expense. And what we would propose with that is that the portion that would be 911 eligible, we would move forward as the dispatch center going ahead and pursuing that. So it stays separate of what we're discussing at this point, but at the same time, we wanted to make sure that we discussed it in front of you, that it is a major part of how we're hoping to improve the service as a whole. Several of our conversations before, I think a lot of this applies to not just EMS, but all emergency services in the county. So what your suggestion is improvement for overall communications, and I think that's I think you're to be commended, your group, for that. Also, if you look at what you're proposing here, previous proposal was more like over $750,000, and you're providing basically the same service for $160,000. So I think y'all got creative, and appreciate what you did. Before we go any further, I'm gonna make you say it again because you said it best. Without the ABL.
Correct. I mean, my main concern, we've considered several types of software, different types of software to look at. But the real issue that we're experiencing now is that we have to have our CAD connectivity to our units. It's got to be stable and dependable at all times, and also through the ABL. That is our main concern, I think, over the first years. And with some of the products that Larry's presented with us, that's a workable solution to us right now with what some of the information that will assist us in deployment of the trucks, making sure that our benchmarks and our numbers, we're meeting what we say we're going to meet. He's assured us that they have some software that'll do that, so I think we're moving forward. But the most important thing is the AVL and the CAD connectivity. So along with this, if we can strive to work with this and get this up and running, I think that's going to benefit us. That's going to be one of the biggest improvements we'll see right now, because our connectivity, like I said, it's sometimes it can be sporadic for different reasons.
Mary, on the second device estimate,
Yes.
laptop or tablet, that doesn't include any maintenance agreements, right?
That would be the device and the mounting equipment. We picked two different models, one tablet, one laptop that we used. They actually came out similar in cost. So you would have, actually, I don't know that we would have anything because of it being a tablet that you'd have a maintenance.
I don't, in just looking at reviewing the numbers right there, in my understanding of it, I don't think there's a maintenance involved in that. Any type of 3-year,
I'm in the price quotes for these computers that are coming out, most of the time, that includes a 3 to 4 year warranty on the device.
Maybe maintenance agreements is the right
As far
word.
as the maintenance costs, it's in the price of the unit.
So those tough books or
Those are not tough books.
ruggedized tablets?
Ruggedized tablets.
Is that the GTAC?
That was the G.
Because I know we
GTAC comes with
demoed the
that.
GTAC, and we talked through the cost of doing the tough books versus a probably a lighter duty version. And I only say this because we've been working this particular aspect of this project probably for the last 7 months to determine what the best fit for the ambulances and the service staff is. So, and we came out probably a little higher than $2,500 a unit. I think we were at about $3,000 a unit, including all the mounting hardware and everything. So I think we probably just need to delve into that a little bit more, maybe during some of the other discussion. But I just want to understand what was in your estimate.
The quote, I've been dealing with GTAC recently, and with an additional 5-year warranty, it's $3,000. It's $25,000 if you just go with the standard 3-year warranty, which does cover accidental breakdown.
But I think, I'm not sure how the GTACs work with the CAD software, with the OSSI and everything else versus what we originally talked about, because I know the GTACs didn't really work real well with what we originally.
Well, as long as the GTACs are running a Windows 7 platform, there is no reason that they can't run the One Solution MCT program. That's all.
In our
that's
experiments,
required.
we demoed both tablet and laptop, and the mobile CAD software installed with no issues.
With the mobile CAD software that you're talking about in this project. Okay.
Yeah, mobile CAD software is something that's been in place that they've already been using for years. And, it went through the upgrade in the spring as well as the regular CAD system. And it's all provided by SunGuard OSSI. But they only authorize it on Windows 7 and below machines. They are not. They have not finished the QA process on the Windows 8.
This also doesn't eliminate the idea of an Apple or an iOS or Android, because we also have software now that would be able to run that. So, yeah, I didn't want it to sound like, well, this is the only machine we could buy, because we do have the capability of doing both. Now, one thing that we do have to consider, I mean, you're going to have ongoing costs, say for your internet-based service, that's going to, be something that continues as well. And I think that's the only one we have.
I think that was it.
Yeah. I'm sure we could find more, but that was, at this time, that was all that was recommended from that standpoint. Are there any other questions?
Do you have any idea what the automatic voice dispatch would cost?
I can tell you that the portion that we submitted to the 911 board for review was 49,000 for a unit that would be able to connect to the CAD and the radio and then go ahead and voice dispatch. Now, what then can also be done with that is that it can, that same computer can connect to the 14 different pre-deployment posts, and you could connect speakers and a signboard, and so that when a call went out for a unit that was at that particular post, it would notify them direct through the computer. The benefit of that is that if you get, the radio gets backed up where you got 2 or 3 calls all going out at once, that they all go straight out on the computer to all 3 of them at the exact same time. So whereas the radio is gonna, because there's only, you can only voice one at a time, there's that benefit where if you had a major event that was going on, you'd be able to get them all dispatched at the same time. So that would be one of the things that we'd like to look at down the road, possibility of working with that and adding that to the system, possibly through future funding or grants or any other methods that we might be able to find.
Anybody else have anything for Mr. Brinker? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm not sure that we need to try to do anything in the form of a motion or anything with that cost estimate, but I think, next week as we work through the cost, that needs to be added into it. You know, so I don't know that, and how that cost is, rolled out and, you know, the implementation of it and all that stuff is yet to be determined since we're this far into the budget year. It may need to be looked at, you know, in the coming budget process or something. But, so thank you for that. Does anybody else have anything, from the technology committee, Greg? Okay, if not, upcoming meeting schedule, we'll meet again next Friday, Tim will have his, model up there. And next Friday again is, the day I would like for us to approve our recommendations to the county commissioners, and that gives us an additional week to catch up on anything that we need to catch up on. The final recommendation has to be there on the 17th, November the 17th.
Well, I'm probably a little ahead of that because that's the meeting date. What
Yeah.
you want to be sure is you give the recommendation.
Has to be there on Friday.
In time for them to consider it.
Yeah, Friday prior to that.
So what else needs to be approved as far as the recommendation? I think we've done the performance standards and we've done, discussed the deployment plan.
Yeah,
We're going to talk about that next
Yeah,
week.
and that's it. And that's the only thing really we got left to discuss is the deployment plan.
But the actions have already been taken, the recommendations.
Right, yeah. Yes, they were taken today.
But we also have to present it to legal too, go through yours and the counties to make sure that.
Yeah, we don't, we're out of that.
Yeah, but we're talking about timeframes.
Jeff is not in here.
It's something we have to consider.
We're out of that. You know, so our goal is next week to be done, and then I have a week to get that to the county in the form of a proposal to get it to the agenda package for the commissioners meeting on the 17th. So next Friday, hopefully, will be the last of the meetings. Next Friday morning at 9 o'clock, same place, same time.
Is there gonna be a party?
That'll be the next Friday. Yeah, that'll be the next Friday. So, anybody else have any comments for the good of the group? If not,
Make a motion.
Second.
It'll be quicker than 10.